My opinions on this movie are kind of controversial, I'm sorry, and please be respectful in the comments, and please be kind to one another. Thank you. This is just my opinion. My opinion isn't the right opinion. It's just my opinion. And that's one reason movies were made, for us to connect. Please be respectful and kind in the comment section. Remember, this is just my opinion. Just my opinion. I'm sure your opinion's awesome. This is just my opinion. So, I actually took some notes. Yes, these notes are my pros and cons of this movie. And this review will be a bit different. In this review, I'll go a bit in depth of this movie, Revenge of the Sith. This is the end of the prequel saga, and in chronological order, right before A New Hope. And this is the review. Enjoy. And this is Happy Stormtrooper Face. So, if I were alive back in 2005, this would easily be my most anticipated movie of the year. This is the movie where Anakin finally turned to the dark side. This is exciting, and the first thing that I can say is that the CGI in this movie has improved right from the opening shot. That leads me to one of the flaws right from the start, which is the fact that Palpatine's plan is a bit convenient, sadly. There is a lot of... They could have died in that space battle leading up to rescuing Palpatine. And I honestly and personally don't think that they know to keep Anakin alive. Because they were literally... They sent these like buzz droids and all sorts of horrific things at them. So, the biggest problem that I have with this movie is the fact that Anakin's flaw is sadly so rushed. And sadly, it doesn't exactly make the most sense, in my opinion. Let's think about it. He has dreams about Padme dying, as he did with his mother. That part makes sense. What it doesn't make sense is the fact that Palpatine persuades him that he can have this power. And then Anakin turns to the dark side. That part is a bit rushed, but what I still don't understand is the fact that it's nothing to do with this anger inside of him. Well, maybe a bit, but most of all, not really. There's not much to do with the anger inside of Anakin, it's hatred. It was just on saving his wife. If you think about it, he still has a good heart inside of him. He just turns to the dark side to save his wife. So then he goes to like the Jedi Temple and murders all these children? What? That is some selfish... I don't think... And it just so rushed. And I find like the deep anger and rage boiling down in Anakin wasn't shown properly at all, sadly. It just was so rushed when you're going to this person who... This friendly and charismatic Jedi to Darth Vader, and it's nothing to do with the deep anger inside him. It's just saving his wife. He still has a good heart. He's still Anakin inside, which makes everything in the original trilogy feel weird and off, because in the original trilogy he has no problem killing. So it just feels weird. And also the fact that after Anakin helps kill Mace Windu, Palpatine's like, no one has ever achieved the power to save one from death, but I think we can pull it off. What? Shouldn't Anakin be like, wait, you've never achieved that, so you're a liar? That I never understood that. Another thing that I don't understand is the fact that the whole middle act, in my opinion, doesn't exactly have a plot, really. Obi-Wan goes on the side quest to kill Grievous, who sadly we don't know anything about or have reasons to root why this character should be dead, and Yoda goes to Kashyyyk, which I guess is a decent idea, but in a movie about Anakin's turn, it just feels like it just leads a path, so these two most important people to Anakin, or some of them, are out of the picture, when he turns to the dark side. Now that leads me to the flaw, which is it could feel like side quests, and I would have been better if they didn't show where they went, or their actual journey there. This movie in the middle act doesn't feel more like a movie that has a plot. It feels more just like a war, and with these side quests. And I wasn't the biggest fan of these side quests because we don't know anything about Grievous or Yoda and why he's going to Kashyyyk. I mean, we know stuff about Yoda, and that I wasn't the biggest fan of at all. Also because it took away from the main purpose and message from this movie. Sadly, I still wasn't the biggest fan of the dialogue. I don't think the dialogue made up with this. And also the fast turn of Anakin was also due to the pacing. And so yeah, I found that Grievous, I wasn't the biggest fan of him because it just felt like a side quest that took away from the main action. And it's just a thing to get Obi-Wan and Yoda out of the picture when Anakin turns. And all the bad stuff happens on Coruscant. And basically, also, it just feels like it was unnecessary, like a side quest, and the middle act doesn't exactly have a main thing driving towards. Sure, it's Anakin's turn, but that's sadly just rushed. And I also find the lightsaber fights, I wasn't the biggest fan of. First of all, this movie has too many lightsaber fights in my opinion, and a lot of it seems like dancing, like they're so perfectly choreographed you forget that they're actually fighting. The problem that I have with too many lightsaber fights is lightsaber fights are special. They're meant to be like a one movie thing. So when you have too many of them, it feels like too much of a special thing. I'm not the biggest fan of because it takes away from some of the soul in some of the lightsaber fights. Another problem that I have is the interaction. I wasn't the biggest fan of, which was also because of the dialogue, which sadly I still wasn't the biggest fan of. Here, everything isn't that heartbreaking because the dialogue doesn't exactly make the most friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and sadly as in Attack of the Clone, there wasn't that much chemistry between Padme and Anakin, so not much feels heartbreaking, or like it's heart-wrenching. So that leads me to one of my flaws with the characters. Sadly, most of the characters are flat, and as I mentioned in my Attack of the Clones review, I said that these Jedi had to follow all these laws. Now as I think about it, it also doesn't create a compelling story, so when Order 66 happens, and it's a sad scene, sure, you have the sad music playing, but sadly I didn't exactly feel anything during the death, sadly, just because they weren't the most compelling characters because they had to follow a lot of laws, and we didn't exactly explore much with that. As I said in my Phantom Menace review, I was fine with everything being clean, just because this was before the Fall of the Republic, and hopefully in the Fall of the Republic and later in the prequels, everything will become grimy. This movie didn't exactly do that. Everything was still clean. There wasn't exactly this moment of suffering that, okay, we're in a war zone in Coruscant. Everything was clean. You couldn't tell that there was exactly a sense of war in Coruscant at all. It felt like just a normal day, which is really heartbreaking because I find that the Clone Wars could have made a huge impact on Anakin's turn. It really wasn't that way, sadly. I also sadly wasn't the biggest fan of the acting, some of the line delivery I also wasn't the biggest fan of at all. That movie also has a lot of nostalgia, but this time I find it muddled the story a bit. There's so much nostalgia that was present. I guess it could at times make sense when you were making a movie that wrapped everything up, but I find it muddled telling its own cohesive story, especially when everything, if you look at A New Hope, it just feels like this tries to fit with there, like they add all this nostalgia possible, but the endpoint of Revenge of the Sith, in my opinion, doesn't add up with it. A New Hope, especially Anakin's turn, which I said was so rushed earlier. Sadly, I wasn't the biggest fan of that. So I find that the most important thing in this movie, which was a heartbreaking and Anakin's turn, and the Fall of the Republic, I didn't feel was handled well. I find the whole middle act had this side quest that was unnecessary because you didn't have any reasons to not root for General Grievous, and I sadly wasn't a big fan of the dialogue or the acting, and I felt like the lightsaber fights were like dancing. And I also felt like Palpatine's plan was a bit convenient, as they could have died during this whole plan. This plan doesn't work. I also feel like this movie didn't explore exactly what Palpatine wants, or how basically after Padme dies, Vader has nothing to live for. He just to join the dark side. I didn't exactly get that. I find it would have been better if we understood Palpatine's motives, because then Anakin could relate to it. He was just like, an evil guy, which is I wasn't the biggest fan of, especially in an era of a trilogy that's heavily used on politics and viewpoints. That's one thing that I liked about the politics, is there isn't a right and wrong. Here I feel like they at times they kind of remove it, but I feel like it'd be better if we learned about what Talon used. Overall, I liked the score. It was really good. It was one of the stronger scores in my opinion. I just wasn't the biggest fan of this movie, but it still is the best of the prequels in my opinion. And I'll give Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith a C. This is just my opinion. I know this will anger a lot of fans, and so please don't take this seriously. This is just my opinion. Please, I'm sorry. Remember, this is my opinion. My opinion isn't the right opinion. It's just my opinion. I find that we should all form our own opinions, and that's one reason why movies were made, for us to connect in a lively conversation or debate. Thanks. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to. Thanks. Bye. See you later.